All right. So the title of our session is Order and Disorder in South Asia, Session 5 and Panel 1. The title of our session is Partition, Postcolonial Condition and Post 9/11 Wars, an analysis of the poetics of disorder in South Asian fiction. I myself, Dr. Qurratulaen from the English Department, FCCU Lahore, and my co-presenter could not join, unfortunately. She's busy. I'll be presenting the first paper of this panel. Then Dr. Mariam Raza from the Institute of English Studies, University of the Punjab, will be presenting her work. And then we have Aniba Hassnain, who is a postgraduate student at the Department of English, Forman Christian College. She'll be presenting her work. And lastly, Miss Kushmala Mariam would be presenting her work from FC College. She's a postgraduate student as well. A very quick introduction to the panel. The panel aims at exploring the depiction of chaotic political events and their psychosocial after effects in the selected South Asian fiction. We'll discuss the poetics of the disorder in the partition in Rajinder Singh Bedi's Lajwanti and Jamila Hashmi's Exile, regional legacy of the post-colonial politics in Mohsen Hamid's Exit West, and the disorder wrought by the post 9/11 wars in Muslim Khan's Thinner Than Skin. It intends to initiate debate on the representation of historical and political disorders which this region um, faced, and how literature from this part of the world illustrates the psychosocial impacts of these events to accentuate the poetics of disorder from this part of the world. From now on, I'll be focusing on my section of this panel, which will be talking about Moth Smoke by Mohsen Hamid. And the title of the paper is Order, Disorder, and Entropy, Thermopoetic Analysis of Mohsen Hamid's Moth Smoke. What is this paper about? The context of this paper, it is a paper which attempts to connect a scientific theory with the literary studies. The main text is Mohsen Hamid's Moth Smoke, and it talks about political disorder in South Asian fiction as it is depicted. The theory which I'll be using is thermopoetics, and I'll be analyzing three main concepts: entropy, closure, and Maxwell's demon. Main research objectives are to analyze how the anxieties and concern of energy dissipation and death are portrayed by Mohsen Hamid in Moth Smoke. Secondly, to critically evaluate the text of Moth Smoke to find out how Hamid has used the themes and motives of entropy and closure in the novel. And lastly, to explore Hamid's portrayal of main characters in the novel as Maxwell's demons. Before we move on to the text itself, I'll try to briefly discuss here the concept of thermodynamics and evolution of thermopoetics into a theory. The concept of energy is important for thermodynamics, and that runs through the theory of thermopoetics as well. I'll be very quick with this discussion about energy. Thermodynamics majorly it deals with the behavior of energy. So, what energy is in physics and how it is then translated into literary theory. To begin with, according to physics, energy exists in two forms: usable form and unusable waste form. The usable energy is defined as quantity required by a body to perform work. In the world, usable energy exists in different forms. For example, fossil energy, coal, petroleum, electric energy, nuclear energy, light energy, and so on. First, this energy is transferred to the body, and then the body performs the required work. For instance, steam engine is a body which uses fossil energy, coal, to perform required mechanical work. And during this process of performing work, some energy transforms into unusable energy, which gets dispersed in the surroundings, that is heat energy and sound energy. The unusable form of energy is also termed as waste energy, the energy which cannot be used to perform any work. So it's all about a usable energy which is used and usable energy or wasted energy, which are the main two concepts in thermodynamics. So thermodynamics, there are two laws in the theory of thermodynamics. First law of thermodynamics is the law of conservation of energy, and second law of thermodynamics is principle of entropy. So the first law says that the energy system or the entire universe system is a closed system, which is called closure. And the second law of thermodynamics is entropy, which is disorder. The term was first used in 1854 by Sir William Thomas. Uh, it's a branch of physics which studies the transformations, interactions, movements, and generations of different forms of energy. And as I've already told, there are two fundamental laws of thermodynamics. So what are these laws of thermodynamics? The first and the second law of thermodynamics were introduced in the mid-19th century. The first law established that the world is closed system, closure, which carries limited amount of usable energy, while the second law states that over time, this usable energy is transforming into unusable energy. According to thermodynamics, the death of the world will occur when all the usable energy of the world will transform its unusable energy. So this is a concept from physics. What is entropy? Entropy is the second law of thermodynamics, and it was actually introduced before the first law. And according to the second law of thermodynamics, over time, the entropy of the world is increasing. The word entropy means disorder. Alan McDuffie mentions that the term entropy means waste energy or unusable energy, while Gould, a thermopoietic theorist, states that entropy does not only mean waste energy, but it is also defined as tendency of the world to move towards randomness and disorder. The closure, the first law of thermodynamics. It states the overall energy of the world remains constant. In simple words, the first law means that the world is a closed system, as enclosed space through the walls of which no energy can pass. Over time, usable energy of the world is transforming into unusable form, but this unusable energy does not leave the walls of the world system, but accumulate in the system. So the energy does not leave the closed system. And the closed system in a text is going to be the world which has been created in that text, thus increasing its entropy but keeping the overall energy of the system constant. In thermodynamics, it is believed that the increased accumulation of the waste energy increases disordered entropy of the world, and when its entropy reaches the maximum, its death will occur. And this is then translated into literary analysis. The last important term in this theory of thermodynamics is Maxwell's demon. Since this theory is it becomes a bit too dark, that used energy and unusable energy, usable energy and unusable energy, and how it is leading the world towards an end or death. So another term was introduced into this theory, which is Maxwell's demon. And in simpler terms, it is one character or one element which tries to control the entropy of the closed system, in which the entire usable and unusable energy is being accumulated. Gould established that this desire to control disorder has been shown in energy physics by James Maxwell, who introduced the hypothetical intelligent figure demon, which can control the energy of a system and can even build efficient engines that can reduce the entropy and chaos of the system. And you will see in almost all the literary texts, there are certain characters who are trying to reduce the entropy and chaos of the system or the world in which they are living. This demonic figure caught the attention of subsequent generations of literary writers who, along with the theme of entropy, have incorporated the qualities of demon in the characters of their novels who work to lessen chaos or create disorder. Characters similar to Maxwell's demon can be found Thomas Pynchon's Gravity's Rainbow, and also in Heart of Darkness, Marlowe, Kurtz. They both are trying to control the entropy and the unusable energy in the world which has been created in both these novels. And in the same way, in Mohsin Hamid's Smoke indicates the influence of ideas of thermodynamics, and it describes it. A very quick intro into thermopoetics by the main theorist Barry Gold. He believes and he incorporates the laws of thermodynamics not as principles of physics but also societal and cultural framework for literature. He discusses the influences of scientific ideas on literature and vice versa, and states that thermopoetics is a term intended to suggest mutual influence, common concerns, and even simultaneous discovery, how novels and poetry speak to science. Similar to thermodynamics in literature, energy refers to as body's ability to do work, but it also signifies personal potential such as firmness of purpose, strength of resolution, and vigor of action of an individual. In simple words, in literature, energy means the physical, mental, and intellectual capabilities and energies of an individual. There are some other theorists as well who have also talked about thermodynamics and further tried to expand the trajectories of thermopoetics. I will just quickly talk about Susie Enger, who has analyzed uh, Heart of Darkness, and she believes that accepting that the novel draws images of disorder, decay, darkness, and chaos, which makes it one with the makes it as a novel, which highlights the um, laws of thermodynamics and also Maxwell's demon. Thermopoetics of Moth Smoke. Moth Smoke, the context, Moth Smoke was a novel which explored the impact of the nuclear tests which Pakistan did in 1998 and its ensuing financial crisis and crunch which the characters have to go through. Also, it's a retelling and it's a parallel, it draws a parallel between this period of post nuclear tests for Pakistan and the turbulent period of Mughal era when Shah Jahan was worried about the question of succession of authority, and there was a tussle between two sons, Aurangzeb and Dara Shikoh. So um, the political scenario back then was Pakistan and India were not on very good terms, and there was this nuclear uh, uh, war and the possibility of nuclear war, and Pakistan tested its nuclear weapons to show its war power. And those tests not only um, had an impact on the economy of Pakistan, but it also had environmental concerns because it was unused energy uh, which was sent into the atmosphere. Main characters, there are three main characters in the text: Dara Shikoh, Aurangzeb, and Mumtaz. Dara Shikoh is the main protagonist who is struggling with his finances, and his friend Aurangzeb is and he belongs to an affluent class, and Mumtaz is the wife of Aurangzeb, but Dara Shikoh also has an affair with her. Themes of entropy and enclosure and enclosure in Moth Smoke. Throughout Moth Smoke, there is a lot of disorder, and the characters are surviving in a closed world of Pakistan in the aftermath of nuclear tests. And there is a lot of unused energy, unused talents, untapped talents of the three characters, and their struggle to bring order to their disordered world. To begin with, Dara Shikoh, the main protagonist, who is referred to as Daru in during the novel. And as I've already discussed, that he belongs to a middle class family, and he is friend with one of the top bureaucrats, Khurram Shah, um, and the name of the son is Aurangzeb. Unlike Dara Shikoh, Aurangzeb had all the privileges that Daru even ever dreamt of, and this gap of status played a significant role in Dara Shikoh's downfall, as he did not belong to an affluent family, and Lahore's tough place if you are not an important person. So his disorder is this this complex which he's in, while he just struggles to be friends with Aurangzeb. The unequal treatment given to people on the basis of their status instigates jealousy and insecurity in Daru since childhood. After completing their school, Ozi went to the United States for higher education, but Daru completed his higher education in Pakistan and got appointed as a banker. Now, the disorder in Darshiko's life, it ensued when Ozi returned from the United States along with his beautiful wife and a child, which gives a sense of deprivation to Darshiko, thus increasing chaos in his mind. Later, the order of his life faces strong blow when another minor character gets him fired from his job by using his political influence. He continues his struggle to get a job, but faces more pessimism when he is refused to be given any job because he does not have any recommendation, he does not have any power. And the entire system of the world making in this novel, it shows that the entire setup is corrupt and full of untapped energy, the energy which has been unused regardless of his good degree and experience, unless he knows some really big fish. So he cannot get job unless he really knows some big fish. Hamid unveils the corrupt system of Pakistan society and shows its role in aggravating disorder in the life of the common man. In a city full of competition, without job, Daru's life sinks deeper into the quagmire of chaos as he's left with no cash to pay bills, and electricity of his house has been cut, which eventually gives rise to fear of uncertain future as he thinks. No more tissue, no more meat, soon no more toilet paper, no more shampoo, no more deodorant. It will be rock salt, soap, and a lota for me. It is for like it is for Manucci, who is a servant of Darashiko. So he's terribly afraid that his life is really going to go out of order. And the loss of electricity and other daily life supplies depict disorder prevailing in the life of the main protagonist. The fear of being doomed and the corrupt system of society forces Daru to get involved in the business of selling drugs and robbing boutiques, which deters his reputation among his friends. But he remains unable to pull his life out of chaos because of the corrupt forces present in the system. Finally, the flawed justice system of Pakistan arrests Daru and puts him under trial for killing a child whom Ozi has killed with his Pajero. This shows that how forces of injustice, corruption, and social gap already exist in Pakistani society plays a significant role in dissipating as well as wasting Daru's energies, thus pushing him towards more chaos and eventually death. I'll be very quick with the other two characters. Aurangzeb, who is the antagonist, although he's the antagonist and a villainous character, but he also has untapped energy in his life, which goes wasted because he's wasting all of this energy in uh, corruption and merrymaking. Talking about the third main protagonist, Mumtaz, the wife of Aurangzeb and the lover of Daru, she, as a female, has another layer of disorder. Her life in Pakistan is somehow a bit more chaotic than Darashiko because she has a failed marriage. She had to bear a baby without her will, and with um, um, she ended up with having an affair with Daru, and she's trying to bring order in her life by writing with an anonymous name. So, heat, dissipation, and death, they are recurring themes in literature, which talks about thermodynamics. And Deborah Shaw and Charles H. Davis state that according to thermodynamics, heat death of the universe will occur when all the usable energy will convert into unusable form, turning the temperature of the universe to absolute zero. But in literature, the idea of death has been associated with summer, stifling heat, fire, and sun, and that is a recurrent motif in moth smoke. Likewise, Mohsin Hamid has used this literary interpretation of associating energy dissipation and death with stifling heat and extremely hot summer. And keeping in mind the nuclear test, the summer has become extremely hot, that summer became extremely hot for Lahoris. Also, he blames humans' careless energy consumption behavior for increasing heat as he satirizes heat emitting engines, AC in mud smoke. Energy dissipation. Um, I'll quickly be be reading the excuse me. I'll quickly be reading the lines from the text. The third bullet points here. The fiction dramatizes worries about the intensity of heat waves by describing that people are getting baked in the still heat. And Daru talks to himself, reflects. All my life, the arrival of monsoon has been a happy occasion, ending the heat of high summer and making Lahore green again. But this year I see it as a time of festering, not rebirth. So that summer was difficult because of the unused energy of the nuclear weapons in the environment. Another instance where Daru sees many dogs dying in the street, and which shows decay, entropy, and death. Another example from the novel, which talks about energy crisis and load shedding, which is a common thing in Pakistan. And I will not go into detail because I just want to draw your attention towards different thematic concerns of thermopoetics and how they have been demonstrated, depicted in Moth Smoke. I'll just read the text from the lines from the text. We have to conserve electricity. The entire country suffers because of the wastefulness of a privileged few. I really do feel that we have a duty to use electricity responsibly. And he also talks about how ACs are hot and they are producing heat in the environment and further aggravating the heat situation by producing unusable heat energy. Maxwell's demon, as I've already discussed, that he is a person who is trying to restore the order. And Khurram Shahzad, father of Aurangzeb, is one of those characters who is trying to bring order into this chaotic world, this corrupt world, which has been portrayed in the Moth Smoke. Aurangzeb, called as Ozi throughout the novel, is also one of those characters who brings disorder, but also is trying to restore order in his failed marriage, but he fails to do so. Darashiko is also one of those characters whose life is all chaotic and he's trying to bring order, and that's why he can be analyzed as one of those characters who shows the attribute of Maxwell's demon. And as a conclusion, Mohsen Hamid has used the concepts and ideas of the second law of thermodynamics to highlight the anxieties about uncertain energy future of Pakistan. In Moth Smoke, themes of chaos, pessimism, and downfall prevail in the lives of the major characters, and already existing political, social, and cultural forces in Pakistani system play a significant role in increasing entropy in the lives of major characters. Along with the theme of entropy, elements of closure and circularity are also present in the novel. In addition, as the principle of entropy gives rise to a number of fear about the future of the world, in Moth Smoke, Hamid has also presented some characters who behave like demons, Maxwell demons, against prevailing entropy in the system and create order for themselves. These are the works which I have cited in this presentation, and that's all from my side. Now I would, if we are not starting with discussion or question answers, I would request the second presenter, Miss Mariam Raza from Punjab University, to begin with her presentation.
All right, hello everyone. Wonderful presentation, Dr. Qurratulaen. I'll just screen share now. All right, thank you so much. All right, so welcome everyone. My name is Maryam Raza. I'm a lecturer in the University of Punjab in Pakistan. And I'm in the panel, as you can see, Partition, Postcolonial Condition, and Post 9/11.
I was wondering, can you put it onto can put it into the presentation mode so we don't see all the sidebar and the...
Right. Let me just see.
It's on the slideshow. If you can click the
All right.
slideshow.
Yeah, that will do it.
Perfect.
Oh,
Thank you.
thank you. Thank
Thank you so much for the guidance. All right. So, the title of my paper is Post 9/11 Chaos and Pakistani Fiction, Poetics of Uzma Aslam Khan's novel, Thinner Than Skin. I won't really delve into the detail of the theory because Dr. Qurratulaen has already done that for us, but I'll just begin with my aims and objectives. So the aim of my study is to basically explore the novel, that is Thinner Than Skin, which was published in 2012 with the critical lens of thermopoetics, as we already know, which is a theory from the domain of physics, thermodynamics. The objective of the paper is basically to unravel the symbiosis of order and disorder because they both go hand in hand in the structure of the narrative, the characterization, and the location, the setting of the plot, which is there evident as an aftermath of a country which has been steeped in the effects of the war on terror. Directly, indirectly, both. Rather, actually, indirectly, more than directly. As far as the author is concerned, then Uzma Aslam Khan is an American Pakistani writer. She currently resides in America. However, her geographical mapping throughout the life has been everywhere. She's been to different countries, lived in different countries, and you get to see this cosmopolitan aspect in her writing also, which is an autobiographical element. Thinner Than Skin, the novel, was published in 2012, and basically, if we see the plot, then it weaves multiple layers of plots. For example, you have the plot of a love story between Nadir and Farhana. You have the plot of a love story between a mythical love story between the two mountains in Pakistan, Nanga Parbat and Malika Parbat, translated as the Naked Mountain and the Snow Queen. With this mythical aspect, you also have the plot where you have supernatural elements included. And then the entire northern myths that we have in Pakistan are evoked over there. Then you have the third plot where you have Nadir's life. Nadir, as a character who I will explain to you later on, becomes a symbol of entropy. Then you also have another plot, a plot where you get to see in a very subtle manner the effect of the war on terror and how all the plots are then destroyed. They are led to chaos. So the structure begins in an apparently ordered manner, and throughout the time, all the plots they break down. So you get to see the disorder in the structure of the narrative in this manner. Moving on, my theorist is Barry J. Gould, an associate professor, as you all know, in the University of Pennsylvania, and she wrote this book, Poetics, Energy in Victorian Literature and Science, coincidentally in the same year, 2012. And she talks about how physics is shown in literature where you come across ideas of heat, you come across images of destruction, you come across images of mystery and doubt, which basically represent the way the energy works, the way you have the concept of the heat death, the way you have the concentration from the high to the low, and all of these elements, according to the book, have been explained in words in literature as opposed to in words in physics. So that is where they see that if the experiments are there in a visual manner, then literature is there in the form of words, and then they bring together everything, hence thermopoetics. As far as the literature review is concerned, then we have this critic, Hussaini, who says that the novels of Uzma Aslam Khan, altogether, all the novels, they do not only criticize the built and urban spaces or the intrusion of the urban and the natural landscape, but rather they also extend to the marginalized communities of the post-colonial cultures such as Pakistan. And this is something that many other post-colonial countries can also relate to. Now, the fact that it says that her works show the concept of marginalized communities, we get to see that they are doubly marginalized because they're not only the other when you see the self and other concept at a grand level, at a global level, but we also have characters otherized within the domain of Pakistan. So the other within the other is depicted in Uzma Aslam Khan's work. Then another critic says that a deep perusal reveals that it is a critique on the social construct of Pakistan. That is absolutely right after the 9/11 and how it reveals that the Pakistanis they got affected by the event, either like I mentioned earlier, indirectly or directly. Over here, we'll see how the a macro level is also shown at the micro level through Ghafoor. Research methodology. The primary tool for this research is, like I've already said, Uzma Aslam Khan's novel Thinner Than Skin, that was published in 2012. The secondary tool for research is Poetics, Energy in Victorian Literature and Science by Barry J. Gould. It's a qualitative and interdisciplinary research because we're merging the study of literature and physics both. Moving on to the discussion and analysis. Now, the novel begins with a prologue, and that prologue is a foreshadowing of the entire novel. So if you basically just read the prologue, you can get a very good idea of how we can see thermodynamics applied in the book. So I've begun my discussion and analysis. The first slide is based on that prologue to give you a holistic idea, and then we'll move on to different parts. So going back to the first slide, now, the prologue basically introduces you to an atmosphere which is full of heat. There is steam rising, as you can read in the quotation. And when we talk about a character, which is a horse over there, the dissipating heat to her nostrils, we see that it is symbolic of the final waste, the end or the unusable. Now, in my slides are going to show you both the physics term and then with the slash, my analysis of how that is interpreted in literature. So we get to see the ultimate outcome in the form of death. That is the symbol of entropy, according to my interpretation. Now, it begins with a scene where this horse unknowingly, unwittingly runs in the meadows and cuts itself against a barbed wire. That is symbolic of how there would be waste, there would be chaos of potential and of energy which could have been used. So it would actually lead to from used energy to characters who are made good use of, or characters who have some form of potential in their lives, and then others who are either marginalized and killed or who are killed due to some other reason, which I'll explain in more detail later on. Now, just like you have the concept of the heat death, that all the heat energy accumulates, it never ends because we have the concept of the conservation of energy. You cannot begin and you cannot end energy, which, if you notice symbolically speaking, then affirms the presence of an entity which has created energy over there. So even over here, when the characters die, there are, number one, memories. So there are absent present characters in the novel. They are constantly mentioned through objects or in the form of memory. And there are also supernatural references to characters. So that presence or the absent presence of characters has been analyzed as the heat death. Moving on, the prologue actually shows you the main character who's also called Mariam. And it said over here, whose cry was about to cut through the valley. This shows an innate weight within the characters. They wait for the ultimate end because they know that every act of theirs is going to waste because they are going to be blamed for things that they never did at a global level. They are going to be targeted. They are by the government. They are going to be targeted by intelligence agencies, and their potential in life as human beings, their potential in life as relations to other characters, that is going to be wasted. So they become that unusable form of energy, which is then killed and thrown away, put aside. Her fingers fussed over Kiran's chaotic hair with increasing fervor is just one example to show you how the diction, the writing of the novel, has certain words which echo the strands of thermodynamics. For example, you have the concept of chaotic hair, increasing fervor, then earlier steam rising, heat to her nostrils. You also have references to characters being described as scientists just because they are in search of knowledge. So this diction is also seen to portray the language that we use in scientific subjects. Now, ironically, the novel has portrayed characters, for example, Farhana and Wes. They go to Pakistan in order to gain knowledge about mountains. That's what their expertise is in. Nadir is a photographer, but Nadir was always expected to be an engineer. And the funny thing is that he believes that he wasn't cut out for it. He was not a man who could be an engineer or a man who could design even his own fate, as we see in the novel. So the concept of an engineer or the concept of a scientist is somebody who actually has control over the surroundings. And you'll see that these characters have no control. Why? Because post 9/11 means that there are certain machineries / government or agencies which are working silently, just like the theory of thermodynamics states that the machineries work silently with efficient results, which are there to promote the well-being of the entire factory or the system that is trying to be created. Parallel or a symbolic interpretation would be that you have agencies working over there, sifting between usable energy, unusable energy, or characters who can be molded according to their demands. For example, you come across certain agencies, intelligence agencies over here who are going to simply go to the houses of characters, put them on gunpoint, and tell them what to do according to their agenda. And this is something that we've seen, that's something that goes on politically. Now, where are their political lineages from? This is something, or sorry, allegiances attached with this is something that the author never says very outrightly, because obviously it's there for everyone to understand on their own. So this is basically a remark, a scathing remark on the government of the machinery, not just of Pakistan, but any government. You can take it in any form for any country. Now, moving on, if we divide the laws, which already Dr. Qurratulaen has explained to all of us, but just repeating again, the laws, if you notice, I've divided them into two lines. If you read point number 2. So the first part of the sentence is the energy of the universe is constant, meaning you can't create it on your own and you can't finish it on your own. Constant, just like the bigotry that we have created with, sorry, the bigotry that we have in the world. Now, there is one aspect over there which I just mentioned out loud myself, that we've created it. But if you notice, the bigotry throughout the world has always been there. It transforms. Either it begins with a personal grudge, or it transforms into a global grudge, could be racism, could be anti-Semitism. In other words, it is always a prejudice that we have against each other, which transforms from one emotion or with one reason to another. So I've interpreted in this manner, and we see it over here that the global prejudice that we have against people from South Asia or from other countries who you might associate with the event of 9/11, that has seeped into within Pakistan also. Because within Pakistan also, then we've created groups that, okay, this side is perhaps being aided by some foreign agency, or perhaps this side is being aided by an agency within the country who is working against the foreign agency. Either way, we have chaos within the country which mimics the global chaos. So that energy of hatred is basically constant. It is conserved. It simply transforms from one form of emotion or reason to another form. Then the second part is the entropy of the universe tends towards a maximum. That entropy is analyzed as chaos or doubt in literature. So just like Dr. Qurratulaen also give you an example from her novel, I'll give you examples where I've told you the structure breaks down. So you have chaos structure-wise. Then you have chaos characters-wise, that characters who are very well knit in the beginning, they begin to pull apart from each other. So characters who are in love are pulled apart due to doubt raised amongst themselves. They don't even look for each other. For instance, when Nadir is taken away by Ghafoor for his impending doom, Nadir he came to Pakistan with his girlfriend and his girlfriend's friend, Wes and Farhana. Wes and Farhana never look for him. They just accept the fact that Nadir has been lost. So there is this chaotic strand between them, and then one day Nadir reads news that some hotel was bombed, some foreigner was bombed, some human being was bombed. Was killed in that bomb explosion. He isn't sure if it was Wes who was a foreigner. He isn't sure if it was Farhana, who is considered a foreigner because she has always lived abroad, so the skin complexion has changed a little. She tends to mimic the foreigner demeanor that you have. That's very natural. As they say, we even adopt the um, pronunciation style. Let's say whenever you go to Canada or America, after some time you begin to talk like whichever place, native country, host country you've been to. So he's not sure, and that chaos is symbolic of how there's chaos even within the country itself. So you have the chaos where Ghafoor, who's a resident of Pakistan, and he is there to kill Nadir simply based on a personal feud, because Nadir and Farhana were actually boating in Lake Sepal Maluk, and over there by accident, a girl fell off the boat and she drowned. So Nadir is basically accused for an act that he never did. Just like many people who've been abroad say that we were never a part of 9/11, but we are being suffocated, or we're being suppressed because somebody else who looked like us, somebody else who was from where we are, is the reason who did it. Okay, so entropy tells you about the decay and confusion. The term of entropy was actually introduced in 1865 by Rudolf Clausius. The mysterious plot is also there in the form of animal imagery. Now, animal imagery is very important when we talk about our north, because if you ever get a chance to see the north of Pakistan, it's very beautiful. And I really hope that you do visit Pakistan someday. So over there, we have our own mythology, we have our own folk tales. What the author does is that Usma Aslam Khan, she weaves those folk tales within the narratives to create a sense of macabre also. And a point emerges where you can't differentiate between the reality within the plot and the supernatural element. So you have this owl who's always present over there in front of Nadir, but the owl tends to at times, he thinks that perhaps the owl takes on human form. So this, again, transformation from one form to another is there, like you have the transformation of energies, and you have this complete mystery within the plot. Glaciers in the eastern Himalayas are receding. That's the quotation that I've used to explore the concept of decay. Decay is a very important concept for thermodynamics. And we get to see in the novel that even your natural elements, they're receding, they're decaying over time. However, a very important aspect of thermopoetics is that if you have decay, or if you have some form of, let's say, an action, there's always an opposite reaction to it. So you have opposites and equilibrium over there. And I've written a quotation over here where they talk about Greenland's glaciers, which are melting so fast that they could sink. But at the same time, the author mentions that in parts of Pakistan, you have glaciers which could be expanding. And that is, in fact, one of the reasons why Farhana and Wes are there to research on that. So throughout the world, you do have an equilibrium created over there. Conservation is also seen in the fact that you have this mention of the mountain. It was Malika Parbat, snow melt, that is the snow queen, that created the lake that reflected her. So if there is decay, that decay is not in waste, that decay leads to creation. Again, conservation is there in some form or the other. Conservation is also there in the form of changing, like I mentioned earlier, changing reasons of prejudice. Now we see conservation in the form of the environmental good, and we also see conservation in the form of switch between characters. Now, towards the end, when there's this news in Naran Kagan, that is a setting, the northern part of Pakistan, that a character has emerged, a human being, as in there's some intruder in the valley, and he is there to cause chaos. He's there to cause destruction. So order would change into disorder. And they call him Parebi. Parebi means somebody who is a traitor. Traitor because they feel that he's the one who is going to bring chaos. He's going to bring political turmoil in the land. And also, he's the one who is leading or who's causing all the mysterious deaths in the name of post 9/11 war on terror. So that Farabi is actually never pinpointed. throughout the novel, we never find out who that culprit is. They say that the police have captured him, but then in another chapter, we figure out that no, it wasn't the real Faribi. So the concept of the Faribi is also the concept similar to that of a shapeshifter, moving from one suspect to another, from one character to another, from one entity to another also, till it eventually ends at Nadir being accused of being a Faribi. Nadir was simply a man who went back to his home because his girlfriend wanted to see Pakistan, her homeland, because she wanted to study about mountains with her friend Wes. That's it. That's actually who Nadir is. But Nadir is blamed, accused of being a Faribi because in another plot, remember he was in the boat where a child drowned. That child is the daughter of Maryam. And Mariam is loved by Ghafoor. Ghafoor is a character who's hell bent on taking revenge from a man who has come from the US. Again, a representative. So this bigotry is there. Just because somebody from the US has come and he's going to step into Pakistan, certain people will then think that, okay, he represents the foreign intentions, etc. These are things that this bigotry is very common. We never rise beyond it. Anyway, moving on to the second law, there is a tendency in the universe to change the superior kinds of energy to the inferior or degraded kinds. Superior kinds is now symbolically seen as characters who initially have a lot of potential to grow as human beings, which Nadir has. Nadir is a very humane character. Nadir is basically a character who understands the true image of Pakistan also. And that true image is not only the kind where we say that we never really had any direct relation with the war on terror, we were simply blamed. No, apart from that also, he shows you the true image, let's say the image of the natural landscape of Pakistan. So you can even qualify it as Pakistani idiom, where there are certain characters who represent and represent Pakistan for you. However, despite the fact that he has the potential to clear all the chaos in the plot, he is disposed of with. This also means that if there is a tendency for one thing to change from one to another, then there's transience in the world. Nothing is permanent. Again, which connects us with the point of transfer or changing from one form to another. Death is the ultimate equilibrium. Ultimate equilibrium is maintained when there is a complete rest, which is seen in the form of deaths in the novel. Obviously, complete rest would be complete rest of the body. Complete rest, even in the sense that the characters who die are immortalized in the plot through myths or through memory or through objects. So, ironically speaking, their image is in complete rest and permanence over there. So that accumulated heat is then, according to my interpretation, seen as a parallel for that. You also have a lot of pessimism in novels which depict thermopoetics, and I've quoted just one line over here. My pessimism wasn't entirely without reason. So by the end of the novel, you have characters steeped in bleak hopelessness. You even, coincidentally, if you notice the last point, I've also mentioned dogs over here. Dr. Qurratulaen also talked about animal characters in the previous example that she gave. Gaddi dogs, or dogs which are supposed to be on guard all the time, they become listless, they become apathetic, they don't even raise an ear when foreign elements are introduced in that land, because it is a representation of how slowly the energy is being diminished, and how the usable characters, for example, even the dogs over there, are reduced to unusable forms because they've been used throughout their life, and now they're just left with the carcass, or they're just left with their selves. Nadir is seen as a character who's sapped of energy because he lacks a soul, in the sense that there is a concept, it's a supernatural concept, that there are human beings who are sick because their souls have drifted apart, which you can actually take. If you want to talk about it logically, then it means you don't know yourself. You don't know what you want to do in life, or you have no clue of your surroundings. You are just existing. This is a concept that we even see in existentialism. So Nadir is one of those characters. When he's been accused of being the Farabi, he can't find out a reason to show his true self, which is ironic because remember, he went to Pakistan to capture the true self of Pakistan, the true image, but in the end, he himself can't do it for himself. So by the end, he is in an abyss of chaos. And in fact, Ghafoor says to him that I'm not going to kill a man who's already dying, a man who cannot establish himself or who doesn't have a foothold. And he says that the biggest form of death for you is to just exist without any, if I use a word from existentialism, then it would be essence. You have a lot of images of graves, you have a lot of images of destruction, you have images of chaos also. So it complements, you could say, the theory over there. Economic efficiency is something which I hinted at earlier, that you have the machinery, which is interpreted as a government working noiselessly. Over here, you have agencies working in covert means. You have characters like Ghafoor, who I mentioned to you earlier. He's not a part of any agency. In fact, he's also hunted down by your intelligence agencies over there, because Ghafoor works in a completely different manner. Ghafoor is the character who merges the global prejudice with the personal prejudice to show you that there's no difference. At the end of the day, if we accuse the other person of being of lacking humanity, we're the same in another way. The tables always turn. It's like a rotating table. It keeps on turning. It keeps on conservation again of, you could say, bigotry. So this is a concept that you have in Spencer's evolution also. If somebody has a good command over physics, then they know it much better than I do. Now, the reason why you have economic efficiency is because you need better use of resources. That is seen in the novel, where the intelligence agencies, they pinpoint characters and they start to threaten them. And they say that if you are going to give us this much food, or if you're going to give us this much of poultry, or this much of livestock, we will ensure that you can exist peacefully in your own valley. So this is how they make better use of the resources, which obviously is corruption. Then they did more work. Actually, the agencies force them to do more work according to their agenda. Cost less, obviously it costs less. You don't need some form of, official apparatus, ideological apparatus. You don't need that, because they're actually using a repressive state agency. They become repressive state agencies. Earned more for the individual or nation, it's actually earned more for the agencies and for the nation, or that part of the nation which simply supports the agencies. You would know by now that South Asia has been steeped in a lot of political turmoil, and you have a lot of chaos within the country itself. I mean, talking about global politics is, I think, something we can do at the second level. We need to talk about our own politics first. So this is how you have chaos in the novel, which depicts the political scenario of the country. Okay. Yes, then if I conclude my slides, and I'll just summarize these points for you, that the international chaos has been seeped into the national level. You have characters who represent bigotry or prejudice at a global level, simply by showing their own personal prejudice. The book depicts images of decay and dissipation. I've already told you that it shows graves also. It shows characters receding in the form of life or life force. It shows you natural elements, such as the mountains receding. Then there's also the universal conservation of antagonism, which rendered post 9/11. And I feel that it renders a lot of antagonism in different forms, not just racism or anti-Semitism, at different levels also. Just some work citations for you. All right, so that's the end of my presentation.
Thank you so much, Miss Mariam. Thank you. Good.
Thank you for
Great.
clapping. I could see that.
Now I would request our third panelist, Miss Aniba Hassnain, to go ahead with her presentation.
Thank you for inviting me, Dr. Qurratulaen. I'll just share my screen. So can you all see my screen?
Yes, we can.
So the title for my paper is Heimat and Home in Disorder, Representation of Psychosocial Effects of Partition in Rajinder Singh Bedi short story Lajwanti. So the primary text that I have chosen for this paper is a partition fiction, which is a story Lajwanti. So this story basically revolves around the events of partition, and the main characters of this story are a female character Lajwanti and her husband who is Sundar Lal. So during the partition, Lajwanti is abducted by a Muslim man, and Rajinder Singh presents her husband Sundar Lal, who tries to save his wife from those men who have kidnapped her. So in that case, Sundar Lal builds and establishes a rehabilitation center and works to save all those abducted women and to give them a sense of home that they have lost during that event of partition. So for my paper, I have used two new theoretical concepts of Heimat and home. The concept of Heimat was proposed in 2022 by Bill Ashcroft, and Christine Hubbard proposed the concept of home that I'll be using in this presentation as well as I have used in my paper. So my paper contends that the character of Lajwanti shows a relationship between sense of self and the possibility of transformative regeneration during the displacement. So when I say transformative regeneration, I mean that how the character of Lajwanti, the character has transformed and how she has adopted a new identity and a new personality. So these are a few research objectives that I'll be focusing in this presentation. So a first objective is to investigate the psychosocial impact of the turmoil of partition, ensuing displacement and its connection with an individual's sense of self, sense of belonging, and the concept of nation. Secondly, I'll be examining how Sundar Lal's search for his wife in Rajinder Singh Bedi Lajwanti symbolizes his quest for his sense of home and belonging. And lastly, I'll see that how the character of Lajwanti acts as a symbolical home, and how her character challenges the traditional notion of Heimat and contributes to the transformative regeneration of identity in the context of displacement. So starting off with the literature review, the partition of India disrupted millions of lives and forced people to choose between two nations, either Pakistan or India. And in this case, they lose their homes and their lives will totally change. So many refugees who crossed the borders left their family members behind, their worldly belongings behind, and also their ancestral homes in which they were living for their whole lives. And the circumstances under which they left their homes, it actually led to an identity crisis in those people, and also it also impacted their understanding of home, because we see that we see home as a caring place where we get a sense of belonging, but then for those people who left their homes, for them there was this kind of strangeness when they came back. So we'll see that how definition of home have evolved by the time. So Merriam-Webster defines home as a place of origin. However, many scholars define home as a place of belonging in an increasingly alienated world. Another scholar says that it is a space of belonging and being with clearly defined and fixed boundaries. However, there are some critics that oppose this idea and say that home is not a physical space with clear boundaries, but it is a sense of being with others, being with the people you love and with the people you are close with. So the theory that I have used in this paper, the concept of home, which is proposed by Christine Hubbard, she says that home is where you always return to because this is where your identity is. She also says that home is also connotated as a feminine place the woman as the cradle, the nurturing womb from where we all stem. So she gives feminine qualities to home, and she means that home is a place where we feel a sense of belonging. Either it's it's with a physical place or it's with a person. So for the migrants who were either forcefully displaced from their from their homes, they they felt that kind of strangeness when they came back to their homes, and their yearning for their home then actually aligns with the concept of Heimat, which is a German word for home. Bilesh Croft in a book says that Heimat replaces the concept of nation. It may lie in future, but the promise of Heimat transforms the present. Now, the home and Heimat, they both are the concept that gives us a sense of belonging. And how we define the sense of belonging, it is the experience of personal involvement in a system or an environment so that person feel themselves to be an integral part of system or the environment. We can say that nation can be a powerful kind of belonging that provides us a sense of unity to its members and its inhabitants. And if we apply it on the context of Lajwanti, we see that how before partition India was the real home for Lajwanti, but then when she was forcefully displaced, the other nation which was Pakistan, she kind of accepted it as her real home. So the concept of belonging that these nations give us, it also make us confront those challenges that are posed by political and the social factors that are happening at that time. So in this case, we can see the partition is the real conflict that is happening, and the characters are actually facing those challenges, those political challenges that are put forth. So the story of Lajwanti is actually explored from various concepts. Some critics say that Lajwanti highlights the dark and terrifying tales of the days of partition, when communalism replaced the high ideals of nationalism, causing unimaginable destruction, irrational political policies, and disturbed social sensibility. And Lajwanti also focuses on those marginalized voices and the social stigma that abducted women faced after returning to their families through the recovery operations. It also highlights the struggle of women during partition, which questioned the societal perception of family as a caring unit. It also challenged the notion of home as a safe space, which means that numerous violated women experienced homelessness within their families. As I said before, that the people who were migrated and when they came back to their home, they feel that kind of strangeness in their homes. So many researchers have explored Lajwanti through the concept of marginalized voices and homelessness, but I will be basically focusing on the concept of home and Heimat, that how Lajwanti acts as a metaphorical home, and how she being a symbol of home challenges the traditional notions of Heimat. Heimat as a, you can say, a safe space where you feel a sense of belonging, and then how these Heimat and home contributes to the transformative regeneration of her identity and her sense of self during the disorder and chaos. So now coming towards the analysis part of my paper. And the arguments of this paper are built on the concept of nation and how the conflicts within a nation impact the psychology of individuals. So the relationship between individual sense of self-belonging and the concept of nation are influenced by the cultural, social, and historical contexts. So in the story Lajwanti, partition has affected the identity and the sense of self and belonging of the character Sundarlal as well as Lajwanti. We see that Sundarlal tries his best to kind of rehabilitate all those women, including his wife, and to provide them their homes back. But then this conflict within a nation, it kinds of hurt their identity. As we see that nationality plays a pivotal role in construction of personal identity and sense of belonging. It provides individuals with a framework through which they relate to others and express their shared experiences, traditions, and values. So Sundarlal efforts to rehabilitate those abducted and raped women. It highlights the societal challenges and the fractures that are caused by the partition. And the rehabilitation center that he establishes, it kind of act as a source to recover the sense of belonging of those abducted women who were then raped and who have suffered during the partition and also lost their homes. In the story, the slogan for the rehabilitation center is honor them, give them places in your hearts. So when Bedi says honor them, he's talking about honoring those women who were raped, and then you have to accept those women, because during the partition, when women were abducted, their families, they didn't even recognize them, and they used to say that it was better for you to die than to hurt your honor. So basically, this slogan, honor them, give them place in your heart, it shows that Sundarlal was trying to save women and to protect their sense of belonging of those people, and then belonging to their country as well as to their nation, because they have lost it, and which is also a psycho-social effect of the partition. Now, Sundarlal's quest for home and sense of belonging, we see that the displaced Lajwanti, her sense of belonging was affected, and now we see that how Sundarlal, his sense of belonging was affected. The partition had far-reaching psychosocial effects not only on those who were physically displaced, but also on the individuals who lost their loved ones. So in the story Lajwanti, we see Sundarlal's anguish over the abduction of his wife, and it shows her psychological effect, and it shows the psychological effect of partition on his psyche. So whenever the rehabilitation committee would take out the procession through the streets of the city, they would sing folk songs. And Bedi says the folk song was, "Do not touch Lajwanti, for she will curl up and die." Sundarlal's voice would begin to choke it with tears. He would continue to follow the procession in silence and wonder about Lajwanti's face. Where is she now? How is she? Does she ever think of me? Will I ever see her again? Walking on the hard and stony streets, his steps would flutter. So this shows that Sundarlal's search for his kidnapped wife highlights his desperate quest for a sense of home, as he yearns for a comfort and he yearns for the security of the life that they have shared together before she was abducted. As I mentioned before, that critics say that home is not a physical boundary, but it is a feeling of being with others. So the Sundarlal quest for finding his wife, it shows that he wanted a home for himself. For him, his wife was his metaphorical home. But there are some critics who claim that instead of Lajwanti, it is Sundarlal who seems to curl up. So, and in the second point where Bedi says that Sundarlal was worried about the fate of Lajwanti, but critics claim that no, he was not worried about Lajwanti's fate, but he was worried about his own fate. Either he will get his home back or not. So this also highlights the interconnectedness between individual and their sense of home, and also suggests that how one's identity and one's own security is tied to their loved ones. So the identity of Sundarlal is connected to his wife Lajwanti, and obviously he is then looking for his own home, which is a metaphorical home, you can say, Lajwanti. So now moving towards the psychological impact of displacement on Lajwanti. We see that when Lajwanti is displaced, her behavior is changed, her appearance is changed. So she was either forced to leave her homeland, and she then adjusted herself in a new country, Pakistan. When she came back to India, Sundarlal actually went to Wagah border and looked for Lajwanti. He noticed that her head was covered with a red dupatta, like a magical Muslim woman, and one end of it was thrown over her left shoulder. She had learned to imitate the woman she had lived with in the hope of evading her captors someday. So the description of Lajo's appearance by Sundarlal, it shows that Lajwanti gave up her identity to adjust in a new environment. As Bill Ashcroft says, that Heimat replaces the promise of nation. It may lie in future, but the promise of Heimat transforms the present. We see that Lajwanti gave up her concept of nation for her better future. She gave up her concept of nation of India for her better future in Pakistan. So her decision to kind of abandon her concept of nation and Heimat highlights the transformative effect of displacement on her sense of belonging, we can say. So also the way she carries the dupatta, because for Indian women, they carry dupatta on their right shoulder, but now when she came back, Lajwanti, when she came back, she is carrying dupatta on her left shoulder. So this imitation of the woman she has lived with, it also reflects that how the displacement and partition has affected her psychology, and also her individual agency, you can say. She was compelled to conform to societal norms and expectations at the expense of her own sense of self. So we can say that this displacement and her journey from India to Pakistan and then back to India, it shows that how displacement can lead individuals to kind of have significant changes in their identity, in their beliefs, and in their behaviors as well. So coming towards the conclusion of my presentation, Lajwanti's experience highlight the psychosocial impact of displacement and emphasize the complexities of identity, belonging, and survival in the hard time of partition. Lajwanti gave up the idea of nation and struggled to fit in a new place, Pakistan, which was her new Heimat, because she gave up her cultural Heimat to adjust in a new home. So she kind of underwent a transformation to adjust in a new home. Her migration to Pakistan signifies her loss of cultural Heimat, and it also emphasized how her connection to her old home was disturbed because of that conflict. So this Heimat and home, these are new concepts that are proposed now, and I applied these concepts in my paper. What future researchers can do, they can apply these new concepts on other partition fiction, on South Asian literature, on diaspora literature, and post-colonial literature to analyze the transformative regeneration of other characters during the time of crisis. So that's all of my presentation. These are the works cited that I have used. And that's the end of my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Aniba. Good, very good, very good. Now I would request the last panelist of this session, Ms. Kushmala Mariam Moghal, She is a postgraduate student at Forman Christian College. She's my student. Aniba and Kushmala both are my students. And I'm really proud to see them here. All right, Kushmala, go ahead.
Yes, ma'am, I will share my screen now. Okay, so good evening, everyone. I'm Kushmala Mariam, and the topic of my research is the chaos of partition, the psychosocial impacts of forced migration in Jamila Hashmi's short story Exile. So my text is a short story called Exile. Author is Jamila Hashmi. Research methodology is textual analysis. Theory comes under postcolonial studies, which discusses the concept of exile in Edward Said's Reflection of Exile. Then the main contention of my paper is that how exile and the forced migration during partition of India and Pakistan has negatively affected the identity of the protagonist, an unnamed woman, socially and psychologically, in the short story Exiled by Jamila Hashmi. Hold on a second, my screen has got stuck. Okay, so before I delve into my research, I will give a short summary of the story so you all would know what I'm actually talking about. So the story is about an unnamed Muslim woman who is struggling to adapt to her new identity as a Hindu woman. Well, this woman actually doesn't have any name. She is only referred as Bibi in her when she thinks about her past, and Bibi is usually what we used in Urdu to call a woman out of respect. And in India, when she was kidnapped by a Hindu man named Gurpal, who brought her to India as a trophy wife during the partition of India, over there she is referred as Bahu, which is what Indian people call daughter-in-law in Hindi. So this woman doesn't have her own name, so which shows that she has lost her identity. Name is a very important part of your identity, and this shows that she has lost her identity when the exile has been forced upon her. So the story follows the struggles of Muslim woman who has been exiled for years, and it reflects on her experiences. She wonders why humans continue to hope for happiness even after enduring so much sorrow. Thus, the story is a constant reminder of the challenges and difficulties of cultural displacement and the profound impact it can have on individual sense of self. So my research objectives are to explore the protagonist's identity crisis, focusing on negative impacts of forced migration on her identity as a Muslim woman, to examine dynamics of forced exile, emphasizing narrative representations of loss, isolation, and assimilation struggles of protagonists, to evaluate enduring consequences of forced migration, emphasizing the protagonist's long-term struggles with self-acceptance, cultural assimilation, and irreversible loss of her original identity. So the theoretical framework, this research employs qualitative research methodology based on textual analysis, which furthermore establishes the character and thematic analysis of the literary text Exile written by Jamila Hashmi. This research will apply the theoretical framework of postcolonial studies, drawing inspiration from Edward Said's concept of exile in his book titled Reflections on Exile. In the Reflections of Exile, Said explains the idea of exile as incredibly fascinating, but it is a horrible experience to go through. He also defined it as an unhealable rift between a human being and his native place, between self and its true home, and its essential sadness can never be surmounted. So in my literature review, I have first of all looked for the term exile. So according to Merriam-Webster, exile is defined as the state or period of forced absence from one's country or home. Then in Edward Said's work Out of Place, his memoir, he elaborates the concept of exile, the one which he used in his book, A Reflection of Exile. He has basically expanded this concept of exile, and in this memoir, he has highlighted it as the unhealable rift between a person and their native place, which shapes the identity and perpetuating a constant sense of displacement. Then John D. Babur examines Edward Said's idea of exile as an unhealable rift between a person. He has basically expanded more on Edward Said's idea of exile, and he defines it as an unhealable rift between a person and their place of origin, emphasizing the concepts of significant effects on identity, temporal perspective, and ongoing experience of displacement. Then coming to Christian Herbert, he has discussed migration and exile as societal constructs carrying moral and emotional weight, portraying them as negative experiences with a necessary degradation of one's humanity and stability. Then Silpi Mitra emphasizes the traumatic memories of partition, especially for the women, and how art effectively expresses the unspoken weight of past, capturing the enduring sadness and loss associated with exile. Then Saima Aslam explores the harrowing experiences of abducted women during India's partition, revealing enduring pain and dislocation and societal perceptions that haunt the collective memory. In this, she talks about the collective memory in the terms of exile, short story by Jamila Hashmi. Madhulika Singh employs short stories to analyze. One of the short story has been exiled in this paper. And she uses those short stories to analyze the experiences of women during partition, highlighting the permanent division that are made between women and their family and the complex psychological effects of violence which happen due to exile. So coming to the textual analysis, the first argument of my paper states that the psychological impact of exile on the protagonist, an unnamed Muslim woman in Jamila Hashmi's Exile, emphasizing the protagonist's inability to connect with her new environment and forced identity. So as Edward Said states that exile is strangely compelling to think about, but terrible to experience. It is an unhealable rift forced between a human being and a native place between the self and its true home. Its essential sadness can never be surmounted. So this quote basically highlights the idea that exile creates a permanent separation between an individual and their native place, which leads to the sense of loss and sadness that cannot be overcome. This is similar to my argument in the research, which shows that exile creates a psychological rift and ongoing struggle for self-acceptance. As we see in the lines which the protagonist in the story says, exile is terrible, but there is nothing in this world which is entirely under one's control. No one really wants to suffer. The birds have spread their wings and flown to home. So basically, Jamila Hashmi highlights the psychological impact of exile on the protagonist's mind. It suggests that the protagonist is struggling to come to terms with the fact that she has been forced to leave her native place and is now living in a new, unfamiliar environment. So, and the birds have separated their wings and flown home. This shows that when she looks towards the birds are free to go, but she is not free to go. She has been taken from her home place forcefully and she can't escape it now. So this quote implies that the protagonist feels powerless, helpless in the face of her situation, and she is struggling to find a sense of control and agency in her life. This sense of powerlessness and this lack of control can lead to feelings of anxiety, depression, and hopelessness, which shows that a protagonist's mental health and well-being has been badly affected due to exile. So overall, this her lines basically highlights the emotional and psychological toll exile has taken on her and how she is feeling unfamiliar to the surrounding and she is unable to accept the surroundings around her. Then my second argument of my paper states that protagonist experiences highlights the challenges of assimilating into a new culture, particularly when the migration is involuntary. As I have already told that this woman has been abducted by a Hindu man and this exile has been forced upon her. So she is facing difficulties in accepting a new culture. As Albert Said states that seeing the entire world as a foreign land makes possible originality of vision. Most people are principally aware of one culture, one setting, one home. However, exiles are aware of at least two cultures. So this quote by Said highlights the idea that exiles have unique perspective on the world. And since they are aware of at least two cultures and settings, this plurality of vision basically shows an awareness of the simultaneous dimension, which is similar to protagonist's experiences of struggling and assimilate herself into a new culture, which is holding on to her original identity, which is of a Muslim woman. Even though she is living with her kidnapper for years, the protagonist remains unable to accept her new identity as a Hindu woman. Even in these lines, she states that no one had greeted me with music, no one had beaten the drums and sung lusty songs, no dancers had swirled through the night or swayed their hips, made outrageous demands. So basically, normally when the new bride is brought home, she is welcomed by songs and drum beats. This goes on in both cultures, both in Pakistani culture, both in Indian culture. But in the story, Jamila Hashmi is basically trying to show that there is a lack of culture celebration because this woman has been abducted and Gurpal has, her husband, has brought her as a trophy wife. So during the abduction, this circumstances, there is no drumbeat. She is not welcomed like a normal bride would have been welcomed into the house. So she feels the lack of culture celebration and welcoming. This is all due to the forced migration. This lack of culture familiarity and acceptance can contributes to the challenges of assimilating into a new culture, particularly when this migration has been forced upon. Thus, this has created a psychological and social rift between the individual and their native place, leading to persistent loss, a sense of loss, isolation, and she is still struggling to for her self-acceptance, which is similar to enduring the consequences of culture displacement, which has been highlighted in this argument. Then my third argument states the forced migration and exile have significant impact on protagonist's identity as a Muslim woman. So as Said states that exiles are cut off from their roots, their lands, their past. This quote basically shows the profound effect of forced migration and exile have on their identities. The protagonist in the story has been forcibly migrated and abducted, which has resulted in complete loss of her original identity as a Muslim woman. And this loss of identity is consequence of being cut off from her roots, land, and past, which are essential components of her identity. So when she says in the lines, when someone calls me Bahu, I feel as if I am being abused. So this term Bahu, as I have previously mentioned, that it is commonly used in Hindu households to refer to a daughter-in-law. However, this protagonist's negative reaction to being called Bahu suggests that she is struggling to accept her new identity as a Hindu woman, which shows that's why she is showing this negative reaction that she is being abused when someone calls her Bahu, because it reminds her of that forced abduction, that how she has been snatched away from her homeland and how she is living with this new identity which isn't hers, and the pain she have gone through to settle herself in this new surroundings. So that's why she is showing this negative reaction to this word Bahu. But despite being in India for extended period, she struggles to reconcile with her new identity. This struggle of self-acceptance and identity highlights that highlights the irreversible consequences of forced migration, which has affected her identity within the context of religious and cultural affiliations. So coming to the conclusion, this research highlights the lasting impact of forced migration in Jamila Hashmi's exile. Despite of being years in exile, the unnamed Muslim woman grapples with the trauma of abduction and struggles to embrace her forced Hindu identity. This search contributes into a deeper understanding of human cost of historical trauma, emphasizing the protagonist's loss of Muslim identity due to forced migration during India-Pakistan partition. So basically, this paper encourages the future research on intergenerational impact of forced migration during the partition, more probably exploration of how Muslim women trauma has been passed on to her descendants. In the story, she had 3 children, 2 boys and 1 girl, and how her trauma has been passed on to her next generation, involving analysis of narratives and behavior and culture assimilation. So future researchers can research on the generational trauma in this story. So that's all from my side. These are my work cited. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ms. Kushmala. Well done. Well done. I think I'll be quickly winding up the entire discussion. So this panel was mainly aimed at highlighting the themes of disorder in South Asian fiction, and we picked up 3 potential sites of chaos in South Asian fiction. One was partition, the second one was the onset of 9/11, the third one was a very critical period in Pakistani political scenario, which was the nuclear tests back in 1998. And as we see, themes of disorder, chaos, entropy, decay, and these forced migration, they have always been here a part of South Asian fiction, be it from Pakistan or India. And also, while I was listening to Aniba and Kushmala's presentation, and I was also preparing mine, I also noticed that there is a gendered angle towards this disorder as well. Gender females, they suffer more strongly. Their suffering is more poignant, more more traumatizing as compared to men. Although we see that in these political scenarios, wherever disorder is, men and women both are suffering. So I think that's all from my side, how I see this panel unfolding. Questions and comments are welcome. Thank you. Any questions, comments?
Thank you, Dr. Liaqat. That was a wonderful panel, and I think it was the single panel in the entire conference that really focused on order and disorder.
Yeah.
And I think, under the trope of, what you call thermopoetics, I think you all really honed in on this entire issue. It is very beautifully organized with the structuring of the entire 4 speakers. So thank you very much. We may have a couple of questions. And so this is Jonathan Kay. He's also a member of the Global and Indian Posthumanism Network. So, and we're here in San Francisco. And Huawei, who is the moderator over here, she's also in San Francisco from CIIS. So if any of them want to ask questions, I think Jonathan has a question for you.
Well, I could start with a simple question, because a couple of you mentioned qualitative research, and I was just wondering how that was coming in. I didn't understand exactly that element of the papers.
In humanities and especially in literary studies, qualitative research is basic textual analysis. That is called qualitative research.
Oh yeah. Okay.
That's interesting, because some people here make the distinction between theoretical and qualitative research, And in some minds, they're taking textual analysis to be theoretical research.
Okay.
But in any case, I mean, we are interested to see how you all deal with it. Yeah. Thanks.
So in our research terminology, somehow we have always been trained to call it qualitative research and textual analysis as a methodology.
Yeah. I had a question. We both had another question. The entire framework of thermopoetics is extremely interesting. And it also brought up in some of your talks, for example, in Professor Raza's talk, there were two registers. There was the register of what's happening in this world and what's happening in a mythical world. And I'm wondering how you treat these two registers as a closed system. Would you call them a closed system or two closed systems or two systems in communication? And would they be treated as a closed system in that case?
All right, so I would consider it as two systems in communication with each other, forming a complete closed system, because the plot of the real world merges with the plot of the mythical characters. For instance, the owl, just giving you an example, the plot of the owl creating the mystery seeps into the human world when Nadir considers it a symbolic representation of the females around him. So they tend to symbolically represent the human world. And that is what folk tales or fables, myths actually do, even in speculative fiction.
If I may add on a bit to this, this mythical structure and the real world political structure in this novel, Thinner Than Skin, they all combine to present the picture of post 9/11 world in Pakistan, post 9/11 context. Even the myths, they contribute to the acuteness and the seriousness and the chaos of the situation which ensued in the aftermath of 9/11, especially Pakistan's participation in the 9/11 wars.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, I would just like to ask a question based on the thermopoetics, which I thought was very fascinating, and it immediately sparked up some resonances with the post-human thinker Bernard Stiegler,
Yeah.
who talks about entropy and neg entropy in terms of, and if we're going to use this trope of order and disorder, like the capacity for neg entropy is the capacity to be able to find and create order within a system as well, generate potentials out of a situation in which the potentials are drained in individuating systems. And so I just wanted to ask if you could all maybe reflect a little bit on that aspect of how you're looking at this work is also generate, as our discussion is leading to, generating potentials, generating and really interrogating the places of the dissipation of potentials as a site for re-engagement from the rubble in a way. And I'm wondering also, just as an extension of this, if we would consider, or if you would consider thermopoetics and how that relates to poesis, like an autopoesis, and in terms of, therefore we have that seed as a site of kind of a cosmos from chaos. And then the other term here that I felt was Felix Guattari's, but chaosmos. So like from this chaos, that germ or that seed for potential actually is a worlding. So just some comments along these lines.
This sounds really interesting. Since thermodynamics and thermopoetics in itself was a huge thing which I tried to kind of tackle with, it took me a lot of, although I was very excited, this is very interesting, the way you see the connection between science and literature and a potential site for post-human studies as well, as a subcategory of post-human literary analysis. And the two terms which you mentioned by Stiegler and Guattari, they definitely are interconnected with this study, and it's actually a very good idea. Somehow, in this analysis, which is so conservatively focused on thermopoetics, we can include these two terms, and this would enrich, this would further diversify the field of thermopoetics. It's a wonderful idea, actually, I think.
Yeah, to expand a little bit, the idea of negentropy emerges also in science itself in the founding of the ideas of modern science. I mean, of course, you're going back to thermodynamics and to Maxwell's demons, but coming to the 20th century, Schrödinger introduces that term, negentropy, into the picture and questions this idea of a closed universe. And then this is, of course, taken up in the post-humanities with people like Stiegler. It starts with Raymond Rouyer, actually, who uses this term, negentropy. And then we have it used by Stiegler. So it's an interesting trope to introduce into thermopoetics as a dialogic element to see if, and that was partly behind my question about the mythical domain and the domain of actuality, that can be seen as a closed system that is each referring to the other, and having a single problem, as it were, that they're dealing with. But as a line of flight, they can also be seen as separate systems that can open each other up, So this is a possibility that I think it's really fertile, this entire discussion of thermopoetics and, the research possibilities of looking at different lenses, theoretical lenses to expand it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I knew a few bits and pieces, and I've learned many more. And this could actually lead to another paper where you talk about negentropy and how somebody kind of refutes my research or our research. But that would be wonderful and exciting to see other doors opening and other implications and other possibilities. But I'm excited. This discussion had been really fruitful.
Yeah, I think it could even be a subject that we take up in posthumanism, in our posthumanism forum or in our workshop. In our summer camp, it may be a topic that we might consider to look more deeply at.
Yes, we can collaborate and work on it, especially in the Pakistani and Indian context. That would be wonderful if we collaborate and work on it.
Really very interesting.
Yeah. So we can collaborate, and I have already registered for the summer camp, and we can work something along these lines. Sure, for sure. It was wonderful meeting you again here, and I saw your name on the program, and I was like, oh, I know him. So I think that's pretty much all from our side. Thank you so much for providing this opportunity. We all enjoyed preparing it, presenting it. It was a wonderful session. We also learned many things.
Just another question, if you don't mind, if we have time here.
Yes.
Yeah.
But you brought up a lot about, I mean, the theme of home, and kind of that idea of being able to make order, and meaning and relationality in a productive sense, and also the breakdown of nations. And I just wanted to open the question of, like, we seem to be like, it seems like the entropy of nationalism is getting to a place where there's a complete loss of faith. Anyway, maybe this is my question. There seems to be a loss of faith in the notion itself, as things are fragmenting, and the politics is fracturing more and more in such fundamental ways. But I'm just wondering about some ideas about how is it that this notion of home can really be seen outside of that, which seems almost an impossibility in our world. But it also brings up the idea of some kind of a nomadism in a way, which is again coming from Deleuze and Guattari, which is a kind of a self-exile. And I just wanted you to again bring some thoughts and experiences based on your studies in this way.
Aniba, would you like to take this question? Because it is related to home. Well, to kind of simplify it for you, it's like in this global world, how do you find this home where everyone is migrating from one place to another and boundaries changing, you traveling from one part of the world to the another? How do you find that home? Is it still kind of applicable, relevant?
So that's how I define home, that the concept of home is actually being evolved over the time. There is no you can say fixed definition to home. For some people it is a kind of a physical location or with boundaries, but for some of them it's like a feeling of attachment with other people. So we cannot give a fixed definition to home, but because it varies from people to people. For me, home can be something else, and for you, home can be something else. So so when you say that how we look for home, everyone has their own opinions of home, so we cannot kind of fix the notion.
Mm-hmm. Right, and when nationalism and identity politics is trying to bear down and force people into locations so they can be designed in a way to but that's really that makes sense. But and I guess in the digital era we are creating communities right now, like kind of like rhizomatically here. The digital times is it's almost like an epoch of rhizomes here. We're making communities, but at the same time we're also in the soil that the soil that we are living on is very defined. The national spaces, and it seems to be that how do we reconcile those two things? Because in the non-physical ways, in the digital ways, there's a lot that can open up, but if we can't actually reconcile this difference and find ways to like make new homes within physical territories that actually serve the making of these communities and new potentials, and it's kind of a crux of our times in a way.
So that in that case, you can call that nation your home, or the place where you are migrating, or even in the case of Partition, we see that when Lajwanti was displaced, she considered her new Heimat her home. So she considered that her migration from India to Pakistan, first India was her home, and then she kind of accepted Pakistan as her new home. So then it's up to you, and you're thinking that how you consider a new nation, a new home.
I think the idea of home becomes more complicated in the subcontinent because of the partition, and that's why we have this intense need to belong to a home, be it Pakistan or India, and that's why the theme of nationalism, the theme of home, the theme of belongingness has been always there in South Asian um, literature, not only fiction, in poetry, in drama. We need to belong, and partition further aggravated this situation. And we always find that loci, that focus, that anchor, which we can call home. That's why South Asian critics, as well as South Asian literary giants or masterpieces, they always try to create this idea of home and how we can connect to places. So this rhizomic idea about rhizomy, nomadism, yes, gradually the South Asian part, the subcontinent people are trying to be kind of that, trying to connect to those nomadism, this nomadism as well. But somehow I feel the partition part of our history that makes us more staunch about nationalism and the idea of home.
Yeah, it is very interesting, and it's very complicated. It's complex. I also liked very much the idea that Kushmala Mughal presented about the contrapuntal aspect of being forced into exile and having two homes, as it were, that are in dialogue or communication, because it is as if you have something inside and then you're pushed into something else that you're trying to accept. That which you're pushed out of doesn't go away. It's still there.
Yes.
So even if you accept something else as home, there is going to be a kind of a fracture in the psyche, and there's going to be a kind of a internal dialogue that is going on. And in a way, as Jonathan was saying, from another even deeper point of view, modernity itself is a condition of exile. We are all diasporic, exiled people. And on one hand, there is an identity politics that is trying to convince us that we belong to this nation or that nation or this party or that party that represents the nation. Nation itself is constantly being re-represented by different interests. And we are being pushed to identify with this or that, so that our emotions are constantly, in a nomadic state, one may say.
Yeah.
So it is a very complicated, it's a dialogic condition. It is not easily solved. To find a sense of a home, a sense of space in which one can anchor oneself is, in our times, is a very problematic notion. The deeper you look, the more difficult it seems. In a way, that's why people are going back to the idea of earth and world as home, that we are in the age of world history, and we have been pushed into this age of world history largely due to modernity as a colonial idea. The partition is a colonial aftermath. Enforced on us due to colonialism. The whole world and the division into nations is a colonial aftermath. So world history and the hierarchism of world history is a colonial aftermath. So in a way, we have to reclaim the whole idea of world history into which we have been pushed, and find our own, organizations of the world and of history. And that's an individual, a felt, affective, work that each person has to do for themselves.
Thank you. This sounds like a wonderful discussion, and I think both hosts' contribution and dialogue with the panelists, that has also created some very potential sites which can further develop these researches or would garner new research projects. This would have been wonderful. This was a wonderful opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you. Any comments? Hua, would you have any comments?
Kushmala?
Yeah.
Hua.
Oh no, I just want to really appreciate your work, your wonderful presentation, because I learned a lot from your topics and what your research is. I just feel deeply touched. I didn't know much about the topic, what you were talking about, but I just feel I learned a lot, and just feel this feeling, wow. And also as a woman, I just deeply touched by all of you as like those beautiful women and doing those beautiful works. It's kind of really gave me this inspiration and encouragement. I don't know why, I just observe this energy. Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah,
Thank you
that's
so
wonderful.
much.
Yeah,
Thank you.
presentation.
Hua is a PhD student from
Wow.
China in CIIS, and she's a wonderful artist as well. So, and see, what we are talking about has its own deep, meaning to her as well.
Yeah. I'm not the person that can just like, express my feelings through words like firstly, but I know myself received a lot in this conversation. Thank you so much. Yeah. I'm thinking about to draw something after this panel. Thank you.
Sylvia, are you here as well? Would you like to say anything?
I just came into the conversation and it's not fair because I saw the conversation just for 5 minutes and it's really immersive. I wish I could stay before, but participate more. But that's the idea of home being a space that allows. More than my home and my limitations of, we are all immigrants in a way, and what's happening now in the world is really, really affecting me deeply because everybody looks like my family. Those people that are suffering, those people that are refugees, and the physicality of them, it really touched my heart as well. So I am thinking, and what you're saying is it's an evolution as a possibility of understanding nomadism in a way that is liberating instead of constriction. It's a lot. I'm just starting thinking because I couldn't attend the whole event, but thank you for allowing me to say that.
Thanks, Sylvia.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, and look forward to this. Will be, of course, this is recorded and it will be on YouTube. Others can watch it. You can share the link and look forward to more interactions in the future. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I think on your side it's good night. On our side it's good morning. All right. Bye.
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 Bye.